Hello, everyone, and welcome to Understanding and Using Open Source Intelligence in Business. I appreciate everyone that's here today. This should be an interesting one. So, a webinar starts with a disclaimer, is usually an interesting sign. So, a quick breakdown what this means is I'm providing this as educational materials, not as a guide on how to be a bad person or a bad guy or unethical. These techniques are presented to you to prevent these techniques being used against you. The better we know how someone can attack us, the better we can defend against it. And it's also so that you can know how to use these things ethically if you're going to use them in a business environment. So our agenda today is first, why do we care? If we're listening to this webinar, we're probably here for a reason, but we'll talk a little why we should care about open source intelligence, the types of intelligence gathering, the open source intelligence uses in business, the open source intelligence uses in as an attacker, and how you prevent open source intelligence breaches. So, who am I and why am I qualified to tell you about this? So, let me give a few minutes to talk about myself. I'm John Miller. I've been in the IT field for about 25 years. I've been with Internetic for about 18 of those 25 years. I have extensive work in cybersecurity and infrastructure. I hold multiple certifications in various things. Outside of work, I enjoy playing with my 3-year-old. I play a lot of video games, and I play airsoft. Airsoft is kind of like paintball without the paint. So if you see me in that uniform there, I am not in the service or prior service. That is airsoft. I enjoy it because I can do those things without actually getting shot. So that's nice. So why do we care about open source intelligence? You always have to make a business proposal on these. So here's kind of why we care. Big part of it is identifying key decision makers. For sales and prospecting and lead generation, this is really useful for qualifying them or being able to target people specifically. So you can get past the gatekeeper if they're in the way and reach who you need to tell your message. It gives you a competitive edge. So if you're researching a company as a business, you're trying to figure out what they do so you can better tailor your message, open source intelligence is great for that. So rather than just going in blind from a phone number on a sheet, you can really look at what they've got and how they're set up and who to talk to so you can approach them properly. It's surprisingly cost effective. While open source intelligence gathering takes a while on a personal basis, it gives you more actionable intelligence quicker than a bunch of people just like the SDR calls, the BDR calls, the salesperson calls. You send a tech out, they look at it. So instead of having a bunch of different people trying to get a look at this company and you buying leads and buying information, you can do your own research in a few minutes to get a pretty good idea what you're walking into. And of course, risk mitigation. As a business, there are always threats to our business, some being fire, flood, stock market changes, environmental changes, anything like that. But there's also the threat of basically, is this almost a cyber security realm of other people are being doing this to you, and they might be other salespeople just trying to figure out how to contact you to sell their stuff because we're all just businesses trying to sell each other stuff, but it could be the bad guys. So having a better understanding of how the bad guys will be using this to reach you can help you prevent them from doing things like extortion or ransomware. So a little bit about intelligence gathering. There are really 4 main intelligence categories out there. There are others, but for the most part, there's the 4 that we care about, and that most intelligence gathering is done, not just in a civilian capacity, but in the greater intelligence community. So GeoInt is geography intelligence gathering, as generally satellite imagery or maps. I actually think this is really cool. You can do a lot of really neat stuff with this. There are things like geoguessers or people that scroll around on Google Maps a lot. Google Maps is great for civilian mapping. You can find a lot of really cool stuff on there. This surprisingly is just out there for you to see. There's OSInt, open source intelligence gathering. That is what we're going to talk about today. That is gathering information using things like public sources. So this is what is really only applicable to civilians. So you're not doing something illegal or getting in trouble. This is where you're using things like court records or Google records or public documents or corporation documents to find information. Here's HUMINT, human intelligence. That is spies. That's a realm of the CIA or the FSB. There's also SIGINT or signals intelligence. That is more of wiretapping, capturing signals off the air, off the wire. That tends to be the realm of the NSA. So at this point, I'm going to be switching from calling it open source intelligence gathering or OSInt to just OSInt. That's kind of the easier way of saying that. So what is OSInt? OSINT is really publicly available information. It's taking this open source information from everywhere you can get it, compiling it and collating it into actually useful information. So it's really the difference between data and information. You're taking 100 data points and making them something that actually is actionable by you. You can pull these from, we'll talk a little more later on where you can get these things from, but generally they're thought of as social media or websites or public records. That is like where you'll see a lot of this stuff. There's also the kind of uses of open source intelligence is what I talked about earlier. Researching businesses is not as common, but is one you do see. And that's kind of what I'm trying to push here more to get more traction and more understanding of how can be used this way. It is very powerful if used correctly. And if it's not used correctly, it's really not that big a deal. But it is something that can be useful to you. Contacting decision makers so that you, not even as a business, but as a person, if you're trying to find someone to complain about something that didn't work right or trying to contact someone's manager or what have you, will help you get to that point. Investigations, open source intelligence gathering is used, or OSINT is used very heavily in investigations, be it private detectives or police or law enforcement. Is used a great deal by them, especially if there's a violent crime or something of nature. They tend to go straight towards social media because a lot of people give a lot more information about themselves on there than they should. And they're like, hey, this person said, I'm going to kill this person. Oh, cool. They confessed to it right there. Let's roll. And unfortunately, it is often used for being creepy. That's kind of the dark side of OSINT is those people who stalk celebrities or people who are up to no good like hackers and cyber threats. This is also where they get their information from. So, that's unfortunately not great. Some sources out there. These are not all the sources. There are more. These are the ones that I usually use. And they're actually the ones that are the most accessible. So a quick rundown on what these things mean. So EXIF analysis and image analysis are very similar. EXIF analysis is when you take a picture using a digital camera, it will tag that picture with a bunch of data. What aperture size, what frame rate, what exposure settings, how you bracketed the camera make and model, things like that. That's useful. But also, if you don't turn the setting off, it tags it with GPS. So be aware of that. When you post a picture somewhere, most but not all websites will remove this GPS information for privacy purposes. But if they don't, you could be sharing it out with people. Also, image analysis. So a picture of something, not just the metadata of it, but the actual picture could tell someone something. Like if I'm trying to figure out where someone is, I could look at the background of this picture and see, okay, I have a rough idea what country, what road, what flags, what cars, what things are there. If you ever look at GeoGuessrs, that's like a online game. They're really good at this. In the range of websites, you have the website technology. So that's just actually what's behind the website. What engine is driving it, what server fingerprint it is, what versions they're using, what CMS, what they're using to create the images on the website, all that stuff. That's more useful for a company like mine, where we're going to talk to a client. We want to know, like, is their website old in bad versions as a threat to them because someone can use that to attack them, or are they having money issues? kind of useful for the sales side. Or they're using state of the art new stuff. It tells me like, hey, they have a marketing team involved in this, or they're hiring out, so they might have some money to spend on me. Also, just research. A company is trying to sell ourselves to everyone else, so we put more information on a website than we probably should. A lot of companies will have like their full like listing of all their employees. If I'm trying to attack that company, that gives me a great deal of names to go by, so I can pretend to be the owner or CEO. I don't have to guess who they are. I can say like, "That guy's that guy." I can say, "Hey, I'm so and so. Send me a gift card. I need $500 gift cards to give to employees." Or just understanding like as a business side, more of just don't overlook that option of here's what they say they are. I mean, it's gonna be their best face, but they'll tell you like this is what they claim they do. This is what they're good at. These are the technologies to handle. Don't just go by what's on the sheet. Actually, look at this. More on the public record side, so the people searches is looking up names in Google, looking up in public records, looking up in criminal records, looking up in court records. That gives you a massive amount of information. This is where you can actually find cell phone numbers or home addresses or business addresses. So we'll go more on that more specifically later on. On the tech side, also, network information, DNS information. That is more on the cyber attack side. Also, companies like mine, where we want to know, looking at DNS records, I can see maybe if they have a firewall that they're trying not to show off, or what else they've got other services out there. So I can either attack that. It's like, okay, their website says this, but over here they have this less defended entry point I can come after, or better information what their network structure is internally, so that it's not just going in blind. So once I get past their firewall, I'm just going, what is this? I have better recon data, being like, okay, now I know how to tailor my attack. Just straight up business records, social media. I'm using these in pairs because it's kind of how they're structured. So business records, those are like filings, commerce websites, things like that. Social media, along the same lines of personal and business social media. Many companies these days will have a social media presence of some sort. Watching how often they post, what their posts look like. Do they appear to be written by a person, or are they generic? Are they buying these things from from another company and just aggregating this stuff? It gives you an idea of how they're working inside, and like how much finances they've got putting into their advertising. If they're putting into advertising, they might have money to spend on your products. Phone stuff, that is more in the realm of people search, but just calling them, like you can call the front desk and say, "Hey, I want to talk to IT," and they might say, "Oh, I need to transfer you to John." All right, now I have an idea of probably who's in charge of IT, or who is the owner, or someone that I got a at least somewhat better idea that I can go over somewhere else and do some more searching. Dorking, it's a weird phrase. It's just the industry phrase for it is through the power of Google. There are ways of telling it to search for specific files or like cameras. So one of the really weird things we can do is people have this bad habit of getting like webcams in their offices or in their business to see like to make sure employees are doing work while they're not while the boss is on vacation, and they put it on the out public facing, and they're like, well, no one's ever going to find that because no one can. Yes, you can. Through the power of dorking or just port scanning, we can find those. And now, as an attacker, I can literally see inside your business and get a better idea of who's there and just be creepy with it. Uh, as the company side, you don't want people doing that, so you should be aware of that and just preventing it. A lot of these things, you do want to look at osintframework.com. This has these things really well broken down into categories. So if you're trying to look for EXIF or image or website analysis, that's a great website for finding tools that do this. Just be careful because the website is not always updated. So especially depending on when you watch this, depending on this recording, all that stuff. You might have old data on there that might go somewhere else now. The website may have been taken over, as unfortunately these things kind of churn fairly quickly. So you might get a bad site. Don't give it any of your own data. Don't give it credit cards. Everything I'm going to show you is using free or freemium resources here. So just be aware of that. Don't get scammed while trying to do this. This is something you generally want to be really careful doing and learning from professionals on how to do it right, which is, us. so we can guide you through doing it without putting yourself in danger. Some of these websites also have ads that will try to prey on the unwary. There's like, for background checks, click here, and it shows like this really long loading bar. It's a scam. Just don't do it. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. So we're going to the real world examples. I've created some rules of engagement for this, both to keep it fair and for my own comfort level. Honestly, going into this, I'm really excited to talk about OSInt, but at the same time, it made me really uncomfortable because it's a hard thing to talk about without getting into privacy. And I am a very private person myself. You can't tell because I'm making webinars all the time. You see my face all the place, but like my personal life is very private. Um, and OSINT kind of delves into that. So just be aware of that. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. Because originally I said it's like, hey, who am I going to target for this OSINT research? I'll target the owner of my own company. And I was like, that I quickly got information I don't want out there. It's all public information, but it gets uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, I'll target a third person, a third company, some other company out there. And I was like, well, this is interesting, but they might sue me. Realistically, is all as it says, all public information, but the way it's presented, the way that people will view it is honestly is creepy. And so while I might win a lawsuit, it's still gonna cost me money, so I'm not doing that. So I made my rules of engagement. So I'm targeting myself. Um, I can't necessarily get myself in trouble, so it's a good place to start. Because I'm targeting myself, I did not want to use my own knowledge in my head of just like, hey, I made this stuff about myself. And this is like, no, this is not a biography or autobiography. I'm not sure which is which. I need to make sure I'm being fair with this. So I used only publicly available resources. I used things that I can find on the internet, not through backdoor channels or contacts or like that. I used the only things I can actually find myself. I use only free resources. So I'm not doing anything that I would pay for as a cybersecurity company. These are resources anyone can get. And I used only what I can find. So no personal knowledge. I had to start from a point and then prove each linkage in that chain using what I find. So, so we're gonna kind of role play this as both a business use and as the bad guys. So we'll show a little bit more of that in a moment. All right. So our business example. So we're kind of do some role plays here. Our business example, we have good John, not this John, other John. We're trying to contact this John because we had an amazing product, a SaaS solution that he really should get, but we can't get past his gatekeeper. Their front desk, their assistant, their executive assistant, whatever you call them now, has prevented us every step of the way, and we just can't get past them. So we really need to find another way to come at them, to come at John and tell him that he needs to talk to us. At the very least, we need to disqualify this lead, or if we can't get John, we need to go somewhere else. Maybe John left the company and we just don't know it. So, as most people will do, we will start with the website. So we've got internet.com here. And you can see our pretty little page here. That is actually the little bridge. I think it's the Big Four bridge, I remember right. The walking bridge, if you can't tell, it's whatever. So looking at it, if I'm like in a business view, if I'm looking at this website, I want to know more. I can read the website. Great. It gives me a rough idea of their services, of my ability to contact them, the email, the phone, all that. But I also see up here they got social media, LinkedIn. Obviously, like Facebook and YouTube are great, but a business targeting business, LinkedIn is great for that. So let's dive into LinkedIn. So we have, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. You see I'm using pictures for this rather than live. One live always goes wrong. Also, I can control the censoring on this so I don't give out information that would be a little too privacy. You're going to deal with that. So going down my LinkedIn page here, I can go down and see who might work at LinkedIn. Well, I got Patrick and Leslie and Scott and someone else. But I got John here. Great. So I do know now that John is a director of Internetic, and I've got a picture of him. So let's click and see what he looks like. At least his profile looks like. This may not be who he looks like anymore. Right here. Um, you really need to start using deductive skills. So not just looking at this and saying, "Oh, look, he's someone." No, let's look at him. So we got John here. We can tell some demographics. He is about 35 to 45. Looks like about 200 to 250 pounds. Let's call it 230 for safety. Glasses, so his eyesight is there. It looks like he's wearing a work polo, beard, white, male, very well kept, things like that. So it gives us some demographic information to start with. If I'm calling him, I have a better idea how to approach him as more loose with my conversation or more professional or business conversation. Um, some cultural background, I can look at him like, is he more sports fan, more chess fan? Um, I'm stereotyping a lot there, but you kind of get the idea of getting a rough idea of what might work with him more. But I can also look at, all right, he's in Louisville, Kentucky. I know Internet is based in Louisville, Kentucky. Does not necessarily mean the employees are, but I know John is. He's with Internet. Great. We're talking Internet anyway. He's got Murray State on there. So we have a better idea of John's age here. Most people go to college 18-ish years old. It takes them about 4 years to graduate. So we have a better idea of when he says he was in Murray State in the early 2000s. That probably puts him now in his 40s. So as of 2005 or 2025, I should say. We can scroll down and see more information about him, but we're not actually that worried about it now. So now we're actually go looking for John's contact information. So we're going to jump to truepeoplesearch.com. Don't worry about writing down these links. They'll all be in the description later on or in the email after this webinar is done. They're show everywhere else too. So True People Search, we're going to do John's name, where we think he lives. And we get a lot of hits, 248. So that's where you got kind of filtered down. So we know John probably lives in Louisville. His age is probably in his 40s or so. So we'll just keep scrolling through. Unfortunately, it's just the legwork's got to be done. And we'll just click through until he finds something that looks like a good hit. And we'll start working that hit. So sometimes you'll find someone who does not necessarily live in the same city as where they work. Sometimes they'll live outside that city. So what I'll do is actually start in Louisville. I'll start in Louisville, and if he doesn't live in, I don't have any good contacts or any potential matches in Louisville, I'll start working the cities around it. So I'll just start working my way out. It's obviously is harder to do for people who are remote workforce, but honestly, we kind of find is that people who are higher up in the food chain of a company in the org chart are more likely to live near the office itself. Just due to various reasons, they'll probably live within 20 minutes of the actual office rather than being remote. Remote workers tend to be more of remote salespeople or whatever. It's just how it works. But with all our researching around here, of our scrolling up and down looking for John, we do eventually find John. This looks like a good hit here. So we do have a John W. Miller, age 41. That is our area. Lives in Louisville, Kentucky. September 83. Sounds right. I have blanked these out, but this is an actual home address. How long this person has lived in Louisville, or at least in that area, Jefferson County, the value of the house, square footage, things like that, phone numbers, and that's actually a Google Map version and a business line. So it does kind of help us there. If we looked at that, we're like, hey, this shows up alongside him. This is probably John because it matches his work number. We do know he's in Louisville. We can kind of narrow this down more and more to get all right, this is actually a good target. So outside of the role play, I will say this is me. I didn't just specifically find this. I did the same thing I would do in real life. I just click until I find one. That is my real cell phone number. You could call it. I won't pick up. I never pick up my cell phone number. But That actually is my cell phone number. That actually is my house in that picture, and that address is legit, and that's my home value. I think it's higher than that now, but you never know. That's actually is me. Um, yeah, so it does work. So say that John doesn't want to talk to us. He's just like, I'm the wrong person to talk to. I don't want to talk to you. Whatever. We've disqualified John as a potential. So we want to go back to the watering hole, go back to internet and see who else we can find. Opencorporates.com is great for this. So you can go to individual commerce sites for each state, but that takes a fair bit of time, and you got to learn how their site looks and how it's structured, and that's just a pain in the butt. I like Open Corporates. It is free. You can create a user account. It's free to make an account. And it lets you search very quickly, search everything, or by officers. So if you know a name, you can search by that and see where else they work, things like that. So in any case, we're targeting internet again here. We got Kentucky. Let's see what we find. Well, this is kind of weird. We find 2 hits. As a company, I'm blurring these out because these are legit companies, and I don't want to involve them in stuff. So we got Internet Incorporated, and also an alternatively previously known as Internet. So we're kind of wondering what's going on here. Well, put our deduction hats here. Likely, that means these companies are related and they're upstream of Internet, or they are purchased, or some sort of business relationship is going on here. It's unlikely that Internet is a fairly unique name. They're probably not just using the same name out of chance, especially because they're both in, like in this case, in Kentucky. So we want to look at them a little closer. Unfortunately, I have to blur a lot of this, but what you're seeing behind behind the black bars here, is a lot of these names in the directors and officers do show up in both companies. So we want to pay attention to that. It's like, hey, they're here, and hey, same people show up here. So very likely, these people are like the upper management of a company that owns Internetic, which I'll tell you out of the roleplay, that's accurate. One of these companies owns Internetic, and we're part of an umbrella of other companies. So you kind of like this does find us. You do have to do some deduction, unfortunately, with OSInt research. It won't just give everything to you. It's really nice when it does, but you really need to like do your homework if you're still in school. Actually vet your research and make sure this is actually what I'm finding is accurate or not. So switching over to our threat actor. Threat actor is just an industry term for the bad guy, or the hacker, or whatever. It's just what we call it. So as the bad guy now, Bad John, I don't like Internetic. They are doing too good a job, and they're preventing me from attacking clients so I can get their clients so I can get money. Unfortunately, ransomware and data exfiltration extortion is a massive business. Like, it is legitimately a business at this point. Not a legitimate business, but legitimately a money maker. I don't know. But Internet's too good at it. So I want to take them down a peg. So before I come at them, I want to get as much data about them as possible so that I can hit them where it hurts. I don't want to tip my hand and be like, hey, I'm coming at you. And they start like targeting me and taking like steps to prevent me from doing anything. So I want to get to know as much as I can. So the more I covertly know, the better when I start making overt moves. So we will do a quick demo. So this is called Maltego. It's also called Graph. At some point, they changed the name to Graph, but everyone still calls it Maltego, even itself. So what this is, if you've ever seen a conspiracy TV show where for some reason everyone's got like the red strings all over a big board somewhere, and like all these little pictures and the conspiracy theory stuff, Maltego does that, but makes you look like you know what you're doing. So right now we've got all of our dots here, and that doesn't mean a whole lot. We want to zoom in. What Maltego does is it will actually automatically do this, but in this case, I'm using the community version, the free version, so it doesn't do it for me. I have to actually do my own stuff and put it on here, but it takes my research and makes it make sense. I don't necessarily recommend Maltego if you're getting into this or if you're doing sales research. It is expensive. I think it's like 5 grand a year. That might change. I've heard the price has been fluctuating a bit recently, but the community edition is free for doing this. You just won't get like what's called transforms. That's the automated portions. You won't get those, but it does this fine. There are other tools out there that do the same thing. It just depends. So hopefully this will show up okay on the recording. So we're gonna, as the attacker, I want to target Internet Inc. Get as much as I can about them. So I'm gonna jump to open corporates, and I'm gonna not show all this. There actually is a whole more information past this, but for privacy reasons, I can't show it, unfortunately. If you do want me to show more of this stuff, do contact me. I am happy to really deep dive into how this works and like a more specific example. I'm trying to like I'll show you how to do it yourself, that type of thing. There's some stuff I just can't show, unfortunately, in a public setting like this. So I would hit open corporates and find like the owner and the CEO and things like that, so I can start attacking them to get to like do a it's called a business email compromise. So I can fish scam them, or it's called spear phishing. So I can get into their email. I can start learning. I can start getting into like their financial flows, things like that. I also would use something like Hunter.io. It's a great one for business and for bad guy stuff, where it'll give me information, like competitive information about this target. It does a lot of neat AI things where it will try to tell me, like deductive wise, what it thinks this company does and their weak points I can target. It also give me like a number of email addresses that is useful for me. From the tech side, I know Internet has a domain, internet.com. So I want to know more about that. So we're going to look at like their website. I do know they have some DNS records out here. DNS is domain name system records. That is like internet.com, google.com, facebook.com. Those domain names point to an IP address somewhere that actually has other stuff, because we can't remember IP addresses off the top of our heads. At least I can't. This makes it a more friendly format. So from here, we can see they have a www address. We can see some SPF records, some other. So what I'm gathering from this is, yeah, the website. Obviously, we look at the website. They have Odoo. So I have a better idea of they're sending emails because they have an SPF record for Odoo. I have a pretty good idea that their website is probably based on Odoo, and they're probably using that ERP platform on the back end for things like marketing and sales and accounting, things like that. I can target that now. I know they're using that as an SPF record. So maybe if I make an Odoo account, I might be able to send as them because the SPF record includes Odoo. I can look at like their Cloudflare registration. I can start targeting that so I can take over domains. I can see that they're using it doesn't show the whole thing in this, but that is Microsoft 365 email protection. So I know they're using an Exchange server, an Exchange Online server. I see Cloudflare again. We'll go down this line a little later on here. I do have an IP address for this, so that gives me an idea of like, yeah, this is not a web hosting address. This is a firewall address. So I can actually associate this to a physical location now. This is their office firewall. So I can see like, all right, what do they got here? I know they're in Louisville, and I know it says Cincinnati here. That's just the out point for where the IP lives. I'm not gonna explain that. That's too complicated for this. But I can see that they're using Spectrum as their ISP. So if I were attacking them, I would have, if I knew they were Spectrum, I could impersonate Spectrum. Like, hey, I'm a Spectrum security support. I need some information from you. Can you help me with this sort of thing? Looking over some more, we have some SPF record information. So we do know they're using Outlook.com or Exchange, the mail server. So I know on the backside, they're probably using Outlook as their mail client. So I can make sure that whatever phishing emails I send will look proper in Outlook, because some, like Outlook especially, does this, where it does not follow standards. It will look funny in Outlook, but look fine in Gmail. So I want to make sure that looks fine in Outlook. Or I can target using exploits in Outlook. I do see they're using Autotask. That is their help desk software. I see they're using Inky Mail Filter, so using Inky on top of the Microsoft email filter. I could target misconfigurations there. It just gives you more information to go with. Just all that stuff. You're not looking for any one point. It's rare you're gonna find a strip smoking gun of like, this tells me how they're not gonna have like their credit card information out there where you can see it. Hopefully they're not going to. But all these put together give me much better sense of how this company is functioning. So that if I'm a salesperson, I can come and say, hey, you're using a bad mail filter. Let me help you with that. You have these things exposed. Let me help you secure this thing. Unfortunately, like as a business, you have to expose some stuff out there. Like with your social media presence, you have to show your face and some stuff to get calls. As a business, you have to have a mail server. You have to have some of these things just exposed. It's unfortunate truth of the world. But going back to the website itself, so this is we're actually looking at the website, not the technology behind it, but the website. We're like, so we know they have Facebook. We know they have some email addresses on there and a phone number. The 800 number doesn't give me much. It's just a SIP number. If I can track it back, I could potentially target their VoIP provider, their SIP provider, and try to do something with that, redirect it. But I don't care for it now, so I'm going down LinkedIn. As I've come down, as we saw earlier, we did see John. We saw him at Emerge State, some other generic demographic information, who works for him, things like that. So I want to get at John, though, because I know he works there. He's in charge of Analytic. I want to hurt him, make him feel it. So what we're going to do is people search him. So we're going to go down John as our actual people search and see what we can find. So we do find some information here. We do find like his age, his birthday, his phone number, where he lives, how long he's lived here. We actually find his truck. Well, I'll show you how I find out in a little bit. I used AI to gather out some information about John's appearance, just so I was being fair with it. But also, I like to use AI in this sort of thing because it thinks differently than I do and has a better way of collating or combining information in non-standard ways. It can pull in a lot more information than I can in my head. So I can feed everything into this thing and say, tell me what you know. And it's really good at that. But it can tell me some demographics, like how hair looks, what eye color, what build, what attire, what observations we can make from that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on these. So you'll see more what the people search actually finds. Oop, on the wrong screen. So we have John's actual information here. So this is his legitimate or my legitimate home address and previous addresses. So I can tell, like, yeah, this is John, and I know maybe where he's lived. Do that screen again on me. So we can pull up some more information like phone numbers, potential previous and current phone numbers. And we can pull up possible relatives. So what you actually do for handling things like relatives and things like that, because there's a lot of Millers out there. What you do is you look at past addresses. So I write down like the last 10 addresses listed there, and then I start looking at other Millers out there and see, like, do these addresses match? If they did in the past, they're probably relatives, like family, brother, sister, mother, father, things like that. If they match in the current and they're roughly the same age, they're probably married or something, like some sort of partnership. You can find like associates of associates of associates doing that. You can get pretty deep pretty fast. So in this case, from that, I did find a cell phone number. And so I got that cell phone number, and I can use a reverse carrier lookup to find that John is with Verizon. I can actually do a lot with that. You think a cell phone number is just be good for calling them? It's not just for calling. I'm going to call him, but I'm going to put on my professional Verizon voice here. Hi, this is John with Verizon Security. I'm sorry, we have a problem with your account right now. It's doing some weird stuff and some weird orders. Could you give me your account information and your PIN so I can log in it and make sure everything looks okay for you? So, in most cases, people will actually comply with that. Weirdly enough, because I'm calling them and I'm telling them, I know your name is John, I'm calling as you're from Verizon and calling your cell phone, they immediately kind of authenticate you or give you credibility in their head, legitimacy in your head. And if I'm challenging them, they will probably respond. Versus if they're challenging me. So like if they call a number or they find me on the net, they'll probably challenge me. If I challenge them first, the instinct is to prove that I am who I say I am. With that account number and PIN, I can do things like ordering hardware on their account, or actually a lot worse is I can do what's called SIM cloning. That's where I get a SIM the same as what they've got, so I can monitor their calls and I can actually pull like SMS 2FA codes. So that's a bad one. That has been done. That's a legit thing. But I'll also see things like that previous address. So I do a triple crown. Was one of John's previous addresses, and because of that, I look at, okay, John, Jeremy, and Sandra, they live in that same address. And John and Sandra are older than John, and they lived in the same place multiple times. Those are probably parents. Jeremy is roughly the same age as John, so he's probably a brother. And I can go deeper down. I go with genealogy on this thing to some extent. I mean, it only goes so far back, but from John, I can find like potentially grandmothers and brothers and uncles, things like that. So, I talk a little bit about Google Maps. Google Street View is really useful for this. So I'm gonna look at this long view house, and what have I got? So I took a series of pictures in Google Street View. You can actually look at Street View, I should say, and you can go back in time. It depends on how often the Street View car comes by, but it's usually at least once a year. So I can look at like, all right, what we got here? I got a house. Not a whole lot of useful information here. If this were a business, say from the business side of this, I could be looking at how does their business look? Does it look run down? Does it look modern and sleek? How many cars are out front? Is it busy? Do you have a lot of people out front during off hours or peak hours? It just gives me more information on like how well are they doing financially? How popular are they? Which should I target them for different times? If you look at over time pictures and the business looks worse and worse and worse, they may not be in a good place. So that you may want to look somewhere else if you're trying to sell something at a higher value, or if they're looking really consistently like their lawn looks impeccable every year for 5 years. The paint looks amazing. The place looks great. Well, they probably have some money. So you might come at it more that direction. If nothing else, it gives you a better idea if you're going to visit them in person, like which building I'm looking for. Anyway, so look at house. Doesn't tell me a whole lot here. So we'll look at over the next one. What we got here? Another picture of the house. It's kind of color's different. I'm not sure if that is just because it's an older picture or if it's just the Google Street car. It's hard to tell with those. So just be aware of that color differentiation, things like that. We do have that odd color again from the first picture, but looking at it, we do have a truck here. So we'll zoom in, but that is a black Toyota Tacoma. I know it's a black Toyota Tacoma because I know trucks, but also like if I didn't know that truck, I could very easily go on the website and do a reverse image search and say like, what is this? What does it look like? Or I can just, click through trucks. There are not that many trucks out there. It feels like it, but they're really not that many. Like Toyota makes like 3 different models, I think. So I will note that though. So we got this black truck with a topper here. So that's useful knowledge. We got something here, another picture of the house. So we do see over here, we got some sort of construction going on. I don't know what that is, but it's large and white. Could be boxes, could be gutters, because it looks the same color as the gutters. It could be boards, but it looks like they're doing something here. So we'll go over here. We now have a red truck. It's interesting this view is higher up. I don't know. Google Street View is weird sometimes. We have a red truck now. Again, doesn't tell us a whole lot, but we do have 2 potential research points. Black truck, red truck. So how we tell which one is, well, John's? Well, we go to the Street View for John's work. So we know where he works. And so we know this black truck is John's. And we do Street View for John's work. And look, black truck. So we do know that our target works here. We know roughly what type of car he's got. So again, it gives us an idea of like, yes, this John owns this black truck and works here, and that truck is in this condition and roughly worth this much money. So it gives us more and more and more points about this person. But we can also look at this office and say like, all right, what we got going on here? I have no idea what that is, but we can look at the office. It's a plain office, but it does give us an idea of like, do they have cameras out here? What are my what points can I come at them from? Do they have apparently have security up here? Do they have a card reader or can't like just any of that stuff? It gives me do they have more doors, things like that. From the bad guy view. From the good guy view, I'm looking at like this doesn't tell me a whole lot. This is just a standard business. But I do notice I don't see like a logo or anything unique to it. I can see the building like it looks very similar next door to it. So I would probably guess it's like a shared building at a glance. I could go and find that address later on and actually do like a lookup of the ownership of the building, things like that. But from also from our long view address, we can find like Melody. We do know is John's wife. We can find their family. So that just gives us more information to go with for bad and good. We're gonna jump back over out of our demo. Whoop, here we go. So with all that scary stuff said, what can you do to prevent OSInt breaches? Not a lot. I know that's not the thing I want to say, but that's the unfortunate truth of the thing. Um, because we're using public information, that is very hard to get removed from the internet. And I'm 99% certain at this point that the government is required by law to provide this information out there. They don't necessarily have to make it easy, but a lot of sites do this work for you to make it easy. So unfortunately, there really is not much you can do other than make it harder for them. Like OSINT yourself. So even as a civilian, not as a business person or attacker, you should take some time to OSINT yourself and see what is available. So you have an idea of like how I can be, how someone come at me. So what knowledge is out there about me? As a business, you should do the same. Just to be aware of like, yeah, they could pretend to be so and so. This is what is available to people. Um, as a bad guy, well, screw you. I mean, I don't know. Um, so how you really want to deal with this is it's called breaking the chain. So as we kind of saw with Maltego here, all this kind of stems down from I start here and work my way into more and more specific detail. If I can be up here and break this chain here, I can break it up here. None of this other stuff is easy to find. I can probably still find it with a great deal more work, but like in most security stuff, kind of the harder you make it, the less likely people are to do to get it. Because like realistically, if someone wanted to steal your stuff, they could kick your door in. But a locked door and a sturdy door, people probably aren't going to do it. It just makes it so that the kind of that cost benefit doesn't make sense anymore. That's what you kind of got to do with OSINT is make it difficult enough that they're going to move on. You can if you can't do that, or reducing your digital footprint, locking down your social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, the TikTok, I don't know, whatever the teenagers out there like these days. I don't know. Keeping that limited so that only your friends can see your information, or that it's so it limits what they can find out about you. This is really hard to do as a business or as a salesperson because you have to put yourself out there. Kind of like the business cards out there, because like the reality of the world is that the internet is where a lot of business starts. Even like say I just want a hammer. I'm probably not just going to the store and buying a hammer. I'm probably Googling like Home Depot hours, nearest Lowe's, reviews for the best hammers for the cost, whatever. That's unfortunately like the internet is how a lot of our business starts or kind of flows. So it's hard to hide that stuff or prevent it. So what you can do, you should do to reduce that footprint. As again, I kind of skipped ahead and forth on accident. Do lock down your social media, Facebook especially. I see a lot of that stuff on there. I think it's because of Facebook is of a certain age, like it's becoming popular while I was in college, and people of my age don't necessarily know a lot about this sort of thing. It doesn't occur to them like, well, people don't lock their doors like on their cars and things. It's like it was safe when I was a kid. What can I tell you? Sorry. Just really be aware of it. of the good and the bad of this. As really we're trying to get at is how you kind of prevent this. So some of the tools I used here, so you can kind of see these are not all the tools that I've used. The tools I use in this presentation. So there's not that many really. It's kind of you can see them. They will be in the description later on. Unfortunately, the sales pitch. I have to give a sales pitch because you're here. It is the price of admission. I'm sorry. So, Internetic, who I work for, we do a lot of things, but if you need technology support, we're here for you. If you need education, like these webinars, if you want me to do it in person and spend a day doing it and eating your food and telling everyone how awesome this stuff is, or something else, we also have a actual on staff education trainer. There we go. He's happy to work on like anything, business process, sales techniques, making your software more efficient. He's great for that. Cybersecurity, one of our big bread and butters. Like we do here, we're great at cybersecurity. We're happy to help you with that. Website design, everyone needs a website. We will help you with that. So my elevator pitch, our greatest claim is that we usually save you more money than we cost. That is a weird statement to be able to make, but in almost every engagement we've had, we will save you more money than it costs to have us supporting you. If you want to know more about how we do that, call me. My email address is actually my direct email, jwmiller at internetic.com. Internetic, and it's a weird word. Our 800 number, 888-526-1631. If you have any questions, feel free to call or email me. I'm happy to talk about this. Obviously, since it's supposed to be a half-hour presentation and it's at 56 minutes right now, if you not even just about this, technology in general, or like how am I doing today? I don't care. I'm happy to talk about anything. If you have questions, we will talk about it. Even if it's like some basic support stuff, we'll do that. If it comes to a point where we need to start billing you, we will tell you. So like, feel free to call us and be like, "Hey, I have this issue. Can you help me?" Yeah, and this is what I would recommend you doing, and we'll work through it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Very much just thank you. It makes whenever I get feedback on these webinars, it really helps me continue making these. So very much appreciate everything. If you want to call us, as again, our phone number, 888-526-1631, our website, internet.com, our email, internetinfo@internet.com, and our address. Don't go there. That is our address, but we don't have an open office. It's a locked office. It's got a security code and all that stuff. Just don't come to our office. If you're delivering pizza, we'll talk. Thank you all for coming. And remember, if you need us, give us a call.